This is Karen on newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for Heart Mojo with Melinda Smith. Welcome, Melinda.
Hi, Karen. How you doing?
I'm doing great. It's the last day of June, and it seems
Can't
like
believe it.
summer is already going very quickly.
Yeah, for people being stuck in their house, it's kind of going quickly, isn't it?
Yeah.
Amazingly.
Well, yeah, I am stuck in the house, which is not where I want to be.
Me
I
either.
understand you have a great guest for us today.
I do. I'm very excited. This is the first time I've actually seen her in person, let alone talked to her in person. I want to introduce AnnMarie Giannino. Did I say that right?
You did, you did.
Awesome. So, thank you for being on the podcast today. Really appreciate it. I have been following you on Facebook since my cancer diagnosis. When I got diagnosed in 2015, I was on Facebook kind of just putting in breast cancer, and your stupid, dumb breast cancer site popped up. And your shoes and your nails were my first, like, oh, this one I have to look at and see what she's about because she's got cool stuff. My favorite thing, shoes and nails, right? So anyhow, welcome because I want to share, with the people who listen your story, and you're very inspiring. You do so many different things. When you sent your bio, and you've kind of I don't know where you started, so we're going to start with that and how
Sure.
you kind of mushroomed out to do all of these things.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both for having me on. Sorry, I was a little chaotic before that, but
Yeah.
isn't that life?
It's
And
today. That's the way
it
my
is,
day was
it is.
too.
And actually, when you said it's the last day of June, I was like, whoa. It's
Yeah.
funny because like May and April felt like they were at snail's pace, right? And then
Mhm.
June just was like, whoosh, there it goes.
Right.
So, anyways, but thank you again for having me on. So, I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2012, and I have a very loud, in your face family that's very nosy. And the best way that I figured I could get them to get all the information to them was to blog. So I started just kind of telling my story and what was going on so that they knew, and I didn't have
Mhm.
to send 15 messages out, and it was just easier. And how stupid dumb breast cancer, the name got started was my youngest son at the time, I have four boys. Uh, he
Wow.
was 4. And when we told him that I had breast cancer, he was literally said, stupid, dumb, breast cancer. Because those were like, naughty words to a 4-year-old,
Mhm.
and it
Right.
empowered him, and it just kind of stuck. So I would just say stupid, dumb, breast cancer every time. And I went with it. And then as I started telling my story, I say this quite often, I'm not polished, it's not pretty. I use a lot of exclamation points. I spell things incorrectly. I swear a lot, but I think that resonated with people because I wasn't trying to be, a writer, and I wasn't trying to be an influencer. I was just being me telling my story. And one of my very best girlfriends is a photographer, and she actually went to school for photojournalism. And she said to me, I can't cook because you cook better than I do. I used to be a caterer, and I'm not going to watch your kids because you got too many of them, but I can take pictures. And I was like, okay. I didn't know what we would do with them. And then the night before my mastectomy, I started like thinking about all the things the doctor tells you. Cause when you're diagnosed, it's all overload. And then all
Right.
of a sudden these little things start popping up every now and then that you remember. And I remember I was like, he said something about drains. What the heck are drains? And I Googled it at 1 a.m. before my mastectomy that I had to be at 5 a.m., which is probably my worst mistake. And I was gutted. I like flipped. I had a panic attack. I couldn't believe that those things were going to be inside of me. I didn't understand it. And there was only drawings. And then I found a blogger who was showing pictures, and it was emotional for me.
Mhm.
But I thought in my head, how come nobody ever showed me this? Like, take the
Mhm.
scary out. So as she was taking pictures, we decided to have a photo viewing at a local restaurant. And I thought maybe I'd get like 30, 40 people there. We had over 600. The fire
Wow.
marshal had to like gear the street for it. And then after that, said, I think I'm going to share these on Facebook. And I'll never forget, I sat my kids down. I asked them, how are you going to feel? My pictures are going to be all over the internet. And they were like, do what you got to do. They were completely supportive. And I remember hitting send for that first picture, and I was sitting waiting, and it was just my chest. It didn't have a head in it. And And the response back from women was so incredible. Oh, I look like that. My scar goes this way though. And I only have one breast and I don't have any breasts and mine's worse. And let me show you my picture. And everyone, it like validated everyone's emotions. And I realized how important telling your story with imagery is important. And then about a year after, your process, and I was going through everything, I went back to the doctors for a final appointment, so to speak. And the doctor patted me on the back and said, "You did great. See you in a year." And I went home and I sat down and I lost it. I just started sobbing and crying and I couldn't stop. And it dawned on me that nobody asked me if I needed help. And I have quite a long mental health rap sheet. I'm a 2-time suicide survivor. I was hospitalized for suicidal ideations a year before my diagnosis. And not one doctor said, "Do you want to talk to somebody?" And that's why I kind of brought mental health into the breast cancer platform, which is really important because when you're diagnosed with anything, a year later, I was diagnosed with MS. So when you're diagnosed with these things, they should really be giving us a support system.
Absolutely.
Depression, anxiety, insomnia all sink in quite quickly. And if you've never exhibited those before, it's really hard and it's a struggle to get through that. So going into the mental health world was an easy transition for me. It was actually harder than talking about my breast cancer because I really didn't share that side of me too much. And again, the response was overwhelming because, I'm loud and I, like to party and I like to go out with my girlfriends, and people couldn't understand that you're depressed. And it showed people that depression has many sides. And I think that's so important. So that's a little bit about my story, and I've branched out into different things since then.
Well, I will say, so for me, when I was diagnosed, I was a Beachbody coach. So I was in really good shape and very healthy, ate organic, never smoked, never did drugs. And when I found out I had breast cancer, everyone's like, "You have breast cancer? How can you have breast cancer? You're like the healthiest person I know," right?
Right.
So I quickly took my social media, which was all about healthy eating and
Yeah.
that, and flipped it for me to be able to deal with exactly what you're talking about. All the things that happened. Now, I did have the caveat of being able to understand the surgeries because I worked in plastic surgery before I had my children. So very familiar with breast cancer, very familiar with, all the things that you have to go through.
Right.
I had many patients with that, but this time it's me.
Right.
So I thought, if I have to go through this, I'm going to make this easier for somebody else. I'm going to be the person that talks about going bald,
Right.
going in for the test. I was in a test group for one, because admittedly, I wanted to keep my hair for my son's high school graduation. I didn't want to be
Totally
bald.
understand.
So I did a study, and then I finally had my chemo afterward. And I talked about that, and I talked about going through that. And I'm a very positive person. If you've looked through my page, I try to be positive most of the time. But I talked about the bad days too. And that's what attracted me to your page initially, was your honesty about how you were feeling, asking questions. How do you feel about this? And people would write, and it gave them an opportunity to get it literally off their chest, so to speak,
Right.
what they're going through, and that somebody else is sharing that. Somebody else understands.
You got it.
And so, I mean, right now, the luxury of having two screens, I always have up my other screen. I mean, just scrolling back through your pictures over time, the breast pictures, whether it was yours or somebody else's. I mean, just that's so important for people to see.
Yeah, I actually in 2014, somebody flagged my page for pornography.
Isn't that
And
crazy?
yes, it is. It's just ridiculous. And I fought Facebook so that we could have those pictures up because it's important. It's education. It helps us. It does take the scary out of it. And it's funny you said that, you were a fitness. I was actually a personal trainer. I got into personal training the year before my diagnosis, and I was eating great. And people said the same thing to me when I was diagnosed. You're so healthy, which then made me, there's so many things we grapple with, right? When we're diagnosed, I was like, did I not do enough? Is that why I got this? Because
Exactly.
people start putting that in your head. Now, for me, I'm also a recovering addict. And I had people actually say to me, well, you probably got breast cancer because of the things you did in your past, which I mean, come on, let's not add guilt into our genre here. We got enough emotions going on. Being guilty because we did something, air quote, wrong is just a load of nothing. It really isn't. There's lots of ways we can lower our risk to getting cancer, but there's really no way to prevent it. That's just
Right.
the honest to God
It's a
truth. I mean,
crapshoot, I think.
yeah,
Maybe you've
totally
had an
agree.
exposure somewhere, but someone
Mhm.
like you or like me, I mean, if you were eating healthy, doing healthy things, and it happens, it's just kind of one of those things. I did a full genetic
Absolutely.
workup. I didn't have any cancer.
Yeah, I did too. I did a genetic workup too. Actually, my doctor really thought that I was going to, because, I was in theory young, and my paternal grandmother had breast cancer. So she kind of thought that it was in my genes somewhere, but it wasn't. And that's
Hmm.
okay. I mean, some people get cancer and we just need to work through it. I
It
mean, that's
just
just
is
the
what
truth
it
of it.
is. And that's kind of the whole point of getting through the challenges. That was
Absolutely.
always my mantra. If I can get through this challenges, you can get through anything that challenges you, because we all have something in our life. You've
Absolutely.
you've had many different things from what you've already shared, and yet here you are today, strong and very out there doing so many different things out in the community to help other people. That's a testimony to you
Oh, thank
and
you.
your attitude, and looking at the um the better side of it, if there is one.
Mhm,
Now,
mhm.
I wouldn't wish this on anybody. I'm
Mm-mm.
sure you wouldn't either.
Nope.
But there's so many good things that have come through it. So many people that I've met, and a strength that I never knew I had until
Yeah,
I got through
absolutely. And
this.
I always say, like, I love my cancer friends. I have some amazing girlfriends and guy friends that I have met through this whole thing. And I honestly would be lost without them. I text them every day. We've gotten very close, but I would give all that away to just, be able to stop cancer from spreading to those with stage 4, because that's the truth of it.
Right.
I don't know if we'll ever see a cure in our day and age, but I think we will see a way for them to stop cancer from spreading, because that's really what we need to do. We need to stop it from
A
spreading.
longer life with quality of life.
Yes, exactly, exactly. I mean, if we're not finding a cure, we have to at least find a way to, give longevity to those with
Right.
stage 4. It just isn't right where government funding goes. It just isn't.
Well, that's why I support Mediviver.
Yeah, absolutely. I say I'm right there with you. When I was first diagnosed, I don't know how I did it, but I felt like every one of my friends had stage 4 breast cancer. I was
Me
like, what the
too.
heck
A
am
lot
I
of them
doing? And, a lot of them have died
passed away.
since. And
Hmm.
every single one of them, the death was just as hard as the one before. And it just would make me more angry, more angry. But one of my closest friends was Sephora Reiser, and she was an incredible 34-year-old with breast cancer, inflammatory breast cancer. Her cancer spread quick, fast. You know, it was hard to see that happen at someone who was so young and still, didn't get to experience things that I got to experience. And when she died, she had asked me, to be her voice. And I took that to heart. And you're right, like, supporting Mediviver is so important. We need research funding. I mean, we truly do. Education is great, but come on, we all know about self breast checks and getting your
Right.
mammogram. I mean, let's be real. We really, truly do. Should we change some other language there? Yeah, we definitely should. I heard a commercial recently, and they literally said mammograms are one way to prevent breast cancer. I'm like,
Right.
what are you talking about? Mammograms don't prevent breast cancer, they detect breast cancer.
Right.
Like, so there's things that we're living in the dark age. And I was just talking to another breast cancer friend, and we were talking about, kids. We need to be talking to boys about breast
Hmm.
cancer, because men are getting it at a very high rate, and it's aggressive because they don't do self breast checks. And
Right.
the
They don't
number
find
one
it till they're far along.
you're absolutely right, and the number one risk to getting breast cancer is having breasts. So that means every human being is at risk.
Hmm.
So yeah, I agree. We need to support things like Mediviver.
We had Kelly on, Kelly Davis.
Oh, I love
She was,
Kelly.
we weren't doing the Zoom ones yet, so she's on the
She's on the
radio
audio.
style
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
But
Kelly's
she
great.
was great. She's an amazing person. She has
She's
just done so
fantastic.
much for that group to be able to raise money.
Yeah, I mean, and the reality is we need, those with stage 4, we need early stagers, and we need people that are caregivers. I mean, there's not one area of breast cancer that doesn't need each other. We all need each
Mhm.
other. The harsh reality is that those with stage 4, it's a terminal illness, so they're not going to be here forever. So
Right.
we need early stagers to, join in and be the voice and help with the funding and help get the right research out there. And I know that it's scary. It's super scary, right? For us with early stage breast cancer or recurrences and all that, because our rate goes up and we don't really want to look at the reality of stage 4, but that's not right either, right? We have
Right.
to educate ourselves because the best power we have is education.
Well, and people who are early stage need to know just because you're early stage doesn't necessarily mean you won't get it back. And 1/3 will
One
develop metastatic breast
30%.
cancer. So
Yeah,
I don't want
absolutely.
people to be scared, but we don't want a false sense of security either. So we really need to go out there and get the research and be able to, like you said, make people at least be in a healthier mode longer
Yeah.
so that they
Yeah.
get some quality of life. I
And you were
chose no
talking,
long, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. You
I
chose
was
what?
going to say, I chose no long-term treatment.
Right.
This was a big deal. I
Hmm.
had friends that weren't very happy with me about doing that in family, and I wanted quality of life. So I'd
Right.
rather I do other things to keep myself healthy, nutritional things, and so far, I mean, I'm 4 years out now. Um, so I'm doing okay. But it's a choice that I made for that. And we have to understand that once you're at stage 4, you don't have a lot of choices. You just have to take what they have for you. So we have to give choices.
Yeah, and I do think that complementary therapy is great. I mean, I've done vitamin C infusions, I've done, acupuncture, I've done all of that because I do think it adds to your balancement of your being. It really
Hmm.
does. Mind, body, and all that. But you were talking about being positive, and I recently put a post up, and I think it's really important to understand. And I know you agree with this because I've looked at your, page and whatnot, but just because you're positive doesn't mean it's going to cure anything.
Right,
It's making it better because you're positive. And
right,
that doesn't mean you can't be angry, because sometimes anger transfers into positivity because you let that emotion out.
right,
So positivity is such a diverse word to me. It's not as cut and dry as, being, unicorns and rainbows, although I do
right.
love unicorns and rainbows.
No,
And
I agree with you. People say, oh, you're positive all the time. I'm not positive all the time, but it's a choice of how I
Yeah.
want to get through the day, living my life that day. I can be angry. I can be mad. I could be
Mhm.
hurt. I experience all of those emotions, but at the end of the day, I don't wallow in that. I want the best quality of life I can have. So I choose to be positive. And
Yeah,
ultimately, I think that helps everything.
AnnMarie,
sure.
you talked about your boys. How did they handle it when you were diagnosed and then going through treatment? That's got to be very difficult for them.
Yeah, so each kid is so different. My older son he has anxiety, he has OCD, and he's a germaphobe, and he freaked out because he asked right away, am I going to get this because I breastfed off of you? And he
Oh
thought
my God.
everything was cancer. I mean, he thought he had cancer about 50 times over. It
How
was
old was he when you were
he was
diagnosed?
13 at the time. He actually wrote a piece for Marie Claire magazine about it, and it was so enlightening to me to read it because I thought he was angry at me. He wasn't angry at me. He was angry at cancer, but cancer's not in front of him. I looked broke to him, so it was really hard for him to go to the hospital and see me, in my chair. I thought he just didn't want to be around me, but it was so hurtful to him.
Hmm.
My second son was, typical caregiver, always making sure I'm okay. And my third was more worried about who was going to cook dinner because I cook and he's a food snob. So even at 6, he was worried about that. And, my baby just wanted to keep snuggling, and it was hard. It was really, really hard for
Hmm.
them. I think what it's done for them, though, is open their eyes. I'll give you an example. Breast Cancer Awareness Month, we all know how we love that day. And,
Hmm.
we'll be in a store somewhere. And if they say, do you want to donate $1 to research? My kids will walk away because they know I'm about to, give the person a little story to tell. But they also educate themselves. Like I've heard my kids say,
Hmm.
the NFL is a nonprofit organization. All that pink stuff that they sell is just crap. It's none of the, like I've heard them say
Good
this
for
stuff.
them.
So, and one of my kids actually found a lump in his breast at one point because he was doing self breast checks. It was just his, he's hit puberty. It was like his little puberty gland growing a little bit, but they're self aware. So I think that cancer has really educated them, and it really educated them in the stage 4 community. They got to be very close to my friend Sephora, and when she died, it was hard on them, but they saw that the funding sucks for stage 4. It
Mhm.
also, we had a good family friend's son. He was 17. He died at DIPG, and they saw how the lack of funding for childhood cancer. So I feel like it made my kids, as hard as it was, it made them so self-aware of what is going on in this world. It also, took their innocence away. I mean, it just
Right.
is. Immediately they come into these little adult minds where they have to start thinking and, making breakfast because I couldn't get up, or, whatever it was. It was hard, but I'm proud of how they handled it.
See, they were all home with you. Mine was going
Yes.
away to college.
Mm,
So, and then I had one that was a freshman going to be a sophomore in high school. He was angry,
yeah.
angry at the whole thing. And for me, it happened. I became separated.
Mhm.
Then I found out I had cancer. Then we had to move. And so he was just angry. So he wasn't the caretaker, helpful one. And the older one was
Right.
gone. So
Yeah.
he could just call and check. So it made him, I think ultimately, even though it's taken a while to get over the anger and everything that happened, I think that ultimately he's going to be a better person, a more empathetic person, sympathetic person in the long run.
Mhm.
It just was
Yeah.
getting through that process. And I think it depends on how old the kid is when it happens.
I agree. I agree with that. It does depend on the age and
So-
where they are in their age development. Some
Right.
kids are more mature than others, and they can handle things differently. And
Well, and
Asians,
boys tend to not mature as quickly as girls. So just in
absolutely,
general. So they're a
absolutely.
little more work anyway.
Yeah, that's
Throw that
true.
in there. So
That is true.
you have all these other things that you're involved in. So can you tell me a little bit more about some of the other things that you do?
Sure. I go live on the Mighty once a month, and we talk about cancer. I try to bring in different people in the cancer world, not just breast cancer, testicular cancer, childhood
Mhm.
cancer, and breast cancer, because I really believe that everybody's story can connect with somebody, and we
Right.
got to keep telling each other's story because it does heal them, it heals us, and connects somebody. I work for an app called Wisdo, and that is a chat service it's like a social mental app, so that you can have conversations about depression, anxiety, PTSD, cancer even, and you can communicate with people who have been there, which is really cool, especially now with everything we're going through. I also work for a company called Lifebulb, and Lifebulb is all about chronic illness and trying to, again, spread the word and, realize that there's solutions to some of these diseases that we don't even know are out there. So doing innovation challenges where we can find different apps and different digital therapies that we didn't even know were existing. So that's super important. I also work I just started a social media company called Click, and it's helping people brand their social media platform and bring it kind of up to the surface through podcasts and blogs and whatnot, and in social media platforms. So, and then I have my own private, I have a couple other things. I have What Would You Miss is a suicide prevention
I have that.
initiative
I
that I
like your
started.
page on there.
Thank you. Thank you. I found that when I started realizing things I missed about myself, it wasn't, my car or my kids or, my family. It was me singing in the car at an octave that nobody should sing at, or me dancing in an elevator just to have fun. Those are the things I would miss about myself. And when you find those little things about yourself, it gives you worth. And if you have worth, you have hope. And it's really come into quite an amazing project. And I'm super proud of it.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great
Thank
page.
you.
So do
Thank
you
you.
ever have time to relax?
I do and I don't. Relaxing makes me like really anxious. Like it's really hard for me to relax. I have one of those minds that doesn't really shut up. I just the other day someone said to me, I was on the phone with them and they're like, I'm gonna go to bed now. And they went to bed and they fell right asleep. And the next morning I was like, how do people really just fall right asleep? I'm like,
They
who does
do. I
that?
don't.
I was like, I don't even understand that. I mean, it takes me like 2 hours to get my mind to like shut off before I can, go to sleep. So I don't like to be sedentary. I have to keep moving. And honestly, it's just in my DNA. It's just how my people are.
No, I'm like that. I'm always doing something. I do have a
Yeah.
day job. And when I didn't have a day job, I did fundraising, lots
Hmm.
of fundraising, school fundraising, art
Right.
shows. I did constantly. I was working, even if I wasn't getting paid, I was working. So
Right.
I hear you.
And sometimes I find relaxing making dinner. I know that sounds really odd, but I love to cook. So, to cook a meal, like it calms me down. I'm in the moment and that's what I'm doing. So, and I was going for a walk right when I was supposed to be on this call with you. So, there are ways that I do calm down and relax a little bit too.
Yeah, I like to drive. So if I'm
Mm,
driving, and I'm singing in the car,
I
because
love
singing
it.
is my hobby, right?
Yeah.
So that's relaxing for me. And I like exercise. The problem is after the chemotherapy, my joints and my body do not respond the same to exercise as
Absolutely.
before. So that's
Hmm.
a little frustrating for me.
I can understand.
But taking a walk or something like that is also relaxing.
Yeah.
Karen, you try to do that, don't you? Get out
Yep.
and do your walk.
I walk every morning and I ride a stationary bike every night.
That's great.
It's just something that's my relaxation. And
Yeah.
people laugh when I say that, but it is. So I
Yeah.
totally get it.
And especially with all this, stuff going on right now, we have to find ways to escape just a
So,
little bit.
so how have you felt about the COVID situation and your health background? All the different things that has happened to you. Are you fearful from it, that it makes you more open to it? I'm curious because people will say to me, "Oh, you're in the risk group." Now, 4 years ago, I had cancer. I don't have cancer now. I'm not a spring chicken, so that puts me in an age group. But beyond that, I don't feel like hugely at risk more. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's funny because I've talked to a lot of people in the cancer community about this. And first of all, we had cancer, like COVID. Give me a break.
Yeah.
I mean, I had cancer, had to deal with radiation, surgeries, chemo, all that crap. Like, give me a break. I have MS. Like, okay, whatever, COVID. Does that mean that I don't? Of course, I wear a mask when I go out, and I wash
Mhm.
my hands, and I sanitize. What am I like losing my mind over it? No. Am I terribly, terribly sad that people have died about this?
Mhm.
Absolutely. It's terrible that people have lost their lives about this. And this isn't to be callous and this isn't to be rude. 1,300 plus people die every single day of cancer. Now, I
Mhm.
understand that cancer is not transmittable. I understand that. However, that's an epidemic, people. Like,
Right.
and that's just breast cancer. Let's add those other cancers in there. I think it's almost 2,000 people die every single day of cancer. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in America. And I understand it's not you can't transmit it. It's not a virus, but it's still an epidemic. These people are dying at exorbitant rates.
Mhm.
Um, they are predicting that between 75 and 125,000 people will have died either from drug overdose, alcohol abuse, or suicide by the time COVID's over. Our
Mhm.
mental health is suffering. Um, I hate COVID. I hate staying in my house. I hate being told I have to stay in my house. My kids have suffered immensely from this, between PTSD and anxiety. I don't like going to the store because the masks do give me they make me anxious.
Mhm.
I feel very uncomfortable not seeing somebody's face. It really, really makes me uncomfortable. I also don't think it's going away. I mean, we have to learn how to cope with this illness
Right.
that's in the world. We have to learn how to cope with it. And we're not doing a great job of it. We're just not. And that makes me sad, but I had a long talk with my doctor about it. I'm the healthiest I've ever been. I take every precaution I can. I'm smart about it.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm sad with how our world is right now. I'm really sad. My aunt, who's like a mother to me, died right before Mother's Day during COVID. And we couldn't grieve for her. We couldn't get together and hold each other. We couldn't, there could only be 8 people in the church. Meanwhile, it's a huge church. Like we all could have been there and social distanced. Yet I could go to the grocery store, the liquor store, and Walmart, but I can't, grieve my aunt. It made me angry, really, really angry. Now, I've been saying this before on different platforms, and I've gotten a lot of hate because people are like, don't you understand people are dying? I absolutely do. That's why I take the precautions that I need to take. However, I really believe that we need to learn how to live with this illness because it's not going away. It just isn't. I mean,
No.
there's no way that, there's no vaccine. Not everybody is ever going to listen. That's just the truth. I mean, we
Right.
see it, right? All over. People aren't listening. So we have to be smart about it. Those who understand what to do need to do it and do it vigilantly. And we need to learn how to deal with it because my kids need to go back to school and I need to get my nails done.
What state are you in? I forgot.
I'm in New York, but I'm in the suburbs, because when I'm like upstate New York, whenever I say that, people are like, oh, you're part of the problem. I'm like, I'm in upstate. Like, there was a point that we didn't even have a case. We didn't
Right.
even have a case of COVID, and they shut down the whole town. I mean, personal businesses are losing their livelihood. They're
Right.
losing it. And this is how families survive. I mean, my family has a business. Yes, it's doing okay right now, but it also carries on for 5 families in my family. So if that business goes, 5 of my families have lost their job. I mean, this is
Mhm.
serious. And it's not just them. I mean, look at our unemployment rate. It's astronomical.
Right.
It's, spousal abuse domestic violence is up 3 times
Domestic
more than we've
violence
ever
is up.
seen it. Child abuse is not being reported because kids aren't in school.
Right.
There's no cases. That doesn't mean that there's no child abuse. Like,
Right. It didn't just go
Yes.
away magically.
it didn't just go away.
Right.
Alcohol, consumption is higher than we've ever had. Eating disorders are spiking. Those in the addiction community are suffering because they need human connection. A Zoom therapy for
It's not the
a
same.
recovering addict is not the same. They need that contact. So I think that while COVID has wreaked its havoc, I don't even think we've scratched the surface of what it's really done to our mental health. Not
For
even-
long term.
Sad
no
part,
way.
what it's doing to our elderly.
Oh my
Right.
gosh.
You know, I have a cousin whose mother just passed away. Mother was living in a senior development in Michigan, got COVID, and my cousin lives in Wisconsin, so there was no way for her to
Yep.
be home. And even for the funeral, it was a Zoom funeral.
Yep.
And this isn't what we need as individuals. I can't
Yes.
imagine not being there for my mother if my mother was dying. If
Right.
my mother was even just sick. And I know, Melinda, you go visit your mom. Luckily we have visitation here. We can
Mhm.
do these things. I
Well,
just can't imagine.
my mom's in a 55 and over community, not in assisted living, but I work in the assisted living community. And
Yeah.
I see it firsthand every day
Yeah.
with the seniors who, their cognitive level starts to decline.
Well, that's what
It-
happened with my aunt. Yeah.
Right. Failure to thrive. They're not
Mhm.
eating. They don't want to eat. They're eating in their room. They're not getting that communal thing
Yep.
that we need as human beings. That's what we need. We need the touch. We need
do.
the togetherness. And though it's fun to see you this way, I'd really rather see you in person. And because there's an energy, there's something that comes through that personal connection.
Yeah.
You
I miss
just-
hugging people. I miss hugging people, like
Yeah.
strangers. I hug everybody. I really miss that. I totally agree. My aunt didn't have COVID. She had Alzheimer's and dementia. And I mean, she really died from failure to thrive. I mean,
Right.
because my family would go up there all the time, and all of a sudden they aren't. It's
And they don't understand that. You just know that you need it. You don't really
Right.
maybe understand why.
And the cancer community, I mean, there's people going to chemo by themselves because they
Right.
don't let 2 people in. Now, of course, you can go to chemo by yourself, but it's better to have someone with you. If you are 12 and under, you can have an adult with you. 12 and or 13 and over, you go by yourself. A 13-year-old going into chemo by themselves? Absolutely not. Like, this is
Right.
people's surgeries getting pushed because it's elective. I mean, none of that makes any sense to me. It just really, really doesn't. But I do understand the severity of the illness, so I'm not negating that. I just think
Right.
that we're handling it terribly. I'm actually embarrassed for how we're handling it.
There seems like there could be a better way to deal with
Right?
it.
There's got to be something.
I'm not the person to figure all of that
Me
out,
neither.
but but I do agree. Look, I wear a mask. I wear a mask every day at work. I wear a
Mhm.
mask when I go to the grocery store. If I take a walk, do I wear a mask? No. But there was a little bit there where my own children did not come in my house. They did
Right.
not come in my house. They came to the door and picked up what they needed and they left.
Mhm.
And I felt bad about that. And my son came home for the first time, and he came home, not for the first time home, but he came home, did a couple things, left, went back to school. He's at Kent State. And then he called me and he goes, Mom, I want to come home tonight. I want to stay at home. I'm like, oh, okay. And then I'm laying on the couch and my brain's going, should he really come home and stay? Like, he's not just going to go in and out. He's going to sleep here. And then he's going to use the bathroom. And then do I have to clean the bathroom? Is this, and all of it. And I felt so guilty. Like,
Mhm.
this is my child. I should not have to think about it.
Right.
And so to your point about the mental side to this, I mean, that was a terrible feeling for me. And I think when he got here, he recognized that. He was sitting on the floor and I'm on the couch and he goes, "Do you want me to put a mask on? Will that make you feel better?" And I said, "No, you're far enough away." And he was, but it's still, all we hear about is all the bad things.
Right.
We're not really told how many people survive. Where most people who get this disease, they survive. And
Mhm.
some of them don't even have any side effects at all from it. They just,
Right.
they have it, they test positive, they move on with their life. Doesn't mean somebody else doesn't get sick from them, potential
Right.
exposure, but we don't hear that. We don't hear the good stories that come out of this bad thing, other than, the musicians who do their thing, and that's wonderful that they're out doing that and making people feel better. But I'm talking about just hearing the death toll every day.
Yeah, there's also this part, I know a lot of people that have lost people during COVID, and on the death certificate, it says COVID related. They're not sure if it was COVID or not. This was, during the peak. And it's been something that has happened. I mean,
Mhm.
they put COVID related. It's been a heart attack, but they put COVID related. And this is something we complain about in the cancer community. And I had a great conversation with someone who didn't believe that it was true that they were really writing COVID related. And it is true. They did do it. Different, death certificates have that on there. But in the cancer community, if you die from metastatic breast cancer and you don't ask them to put metastatic breast cancer, they put lung,
Right.
lung failure, brain aneurysm, heart attack. You didn't die from that. That's a result of having stage 4 breast cancer
Right.
or stage 4 cancer. And we're seeing the same thing happen in the COVID world. And I think that's really wrong. Like we need to really look at those numbers hard. I think that more people have it than we even know
I
because of
believe
everything
that.
you just said. People could have had a cold and it could have been it. And I think people died from it 100%. I think the number is pretty high that how many people died from it, but I think that number could be inflated just a tad bit. And I think the other part to it is, like you were saying, all the good stuff that came out. I actually was getting so annoyed. I had to only shut off social media so that I would post my stuff and come right off, because everybody was posting, "Oh, I baked this bread today and I cleaned out my closet and today I ran a 5 miles and I came home and made the family like this, crepes." And I'm like, what the hell are these people doing? I can barely get out of bed. I don't want to clean my house. I'm lucky if I don't scream at my kids all day. So I just started posting that stuff. I was like, well, I didn't beat anybody today, so it must have been a good day. And another day went by, I still didn't clean a closet out. And people were sending me messages thanking me because they all were feeling the same exact way. They kept calling it, what were they called? Like the Corona DIY. Like everybody was doing Corona stuff that, was home improvement. Meanwhile, the other half of us couldn't even make scrambled eggs for dinner at night, So we have to just remember that sometimes those posts can give people a little bit of anxiety. And
Right.
I worry about that, especially when I'm dealing with the same thing myself.
Well, the nice thing is you put that reality out there for them. You put
I
out
sure
that
do.
there's another side to this. Not everybody's out building a patio and doing their garden early. Some of us are like, I can't do it and I don't want to do it. And I'm going
Yeah,
to sit in and eat Doritos and have a glass of wine.
that sounds perfect. That sounds perfect. I actually
That's my
got,
favorite comfort.
I jokingly put a post up the other day that my mask couldn't fit through my hoop earrings. It was a struggle that I was living with. And someone actually sent me a message and told me that I should be embarrassed for posting that because people are dying from this and I should just put my mask on. I was like, it's a joke.
It was a joke.
It was a joke. Like, obviously I'm still wearing the mask. Like, can we laugh just a little bit? And I think, part of our society's problem is we put restrictions on people, like don't laugh at funerals, don't laugh when someone's dying, don't laugh when coronavirus is going on. Guess what? If I don't laugh, I'm gonna lose my mind. So
Right.
I have to laugh. That's my defense mechanism and how I cope.
Right.
Well,
Well, that's
heal.
what, Karen?
It helps us heal.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, that's why, I don't know how far back you've seen, but I had an event called Don't Forget to Laugh.
Yes.
That's actually one of the things we started our podcast with.
Oh, I love
Because
it.
my grandmother passed away from Alzheimer's over, in 14 years of it. And when it was going on, it's horrifying, right? But
Right.
now we laugh about it and we laugh about the stories and her pinching the guys' butts in the grocery store and stealing things and sticking them under her blanket in the
I
wheelchair.
love
She would have been horrified if she knew that, but you can't you can't take life so seriously that you can't find a little humor
You can't.
in your day. And when I was going through chemo, and diarrhea is one of our favorite parts of chemo.
Yep.
And one day I was just having a tough day and I couldn't get out of the house. So I found a jewel encrusted toilet on the picture, posted that, and like, I'm sitting on my throne all day today. And it was funny. I mean, you have to make light
Yeah.
of some of the things. You just have to.
You have no choice. And that's again, like how we cope, how some people cope. Now, some people cry, and that's okay too.
Mhm.
Cry all you want. I totally get it. I think, in the cancer world, we do a lot of judging people on how they're putting their journey forward, or their
Mhm.
story forward, or their process forward, whatever word we're using this week. And we need to stop. Like, everyone handles things so differently, and we shouldn't judge them for how they handle it. At least there's no right or wrong way to handle this. It's your
Right.
way. Some people were I met people who said that getting diagnosed with cancer was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I look at them like, what the heck are you talking about? And they would explain how they found life again, how they're living life to the fullest. And if they never got cancer, that, and that's great for them. That's their story.
Mhm.
There's nothing invalid about that. That's fantastic. I remember right around my diagnosis, there was that nurse who like danced her way and sang her way through into her mastectomy. And oh my gosh, how she got ripped apart. How can somebody do that? It's the most petrifying time of their life. It probably was the only way she could deal with not crying. I
Right.
mean, we can't judge these people. I got a lot of crap for my shoes, actually. People would send me messages about it. And I wrote a whole blog post about why the heels were so important to me. It was much more than just wearing a high heel shoe. A stiletto gave me power. Like, when you wear a high
Mhm.
heel shoe, you feel like you're like, you can do anything in that shoe. And if I could keep that shoe on me, I felt really strong. Like, I felt like,
Right.
wow, I can get through this. I can stand in these shoes. I could walk like 2 steps. Wow, I'm going to get through tomorrow. And there were times that I had to take the shoes off, and they sat at the end of the bed because I couldn't stand in them. But they were there to remind me that some days I can stand up.
Mhm.
So it was more than just wearing a high heel shoe because I thought my legs looked good in it. I mean, you should have saw the comments I would get. It was a symbol to me. And to me, a stiletto is much more powerful than a pink ribbon. So,
Absolutely.
I think we all need to just remember that everyone handles things so differently, and we should let them.
And it's finding what works for you.
Absolutely.
And if you can get a little sense of it's okay,
Mhm.
hopefully people get that from my page. People have gotten that from your
Yeah.
page for sure. I did. I mean, like I said, the heels were cool for me, and you could see I like to do
I
my
love your
nails.
nails.
So, in fact, you have polka dots on your page right now, your shoes. You have those
Yes.
green
I had green polka
with
dots.
the white polka dots on
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And I always remember that. That's like my favorite picture on your whole page.
Thank you. I do
But
love that picture too.
that was important for me. I did the same thing. I
Yeah.
made sure my nails were done. I made sure that I had
Yeah.
makeup on. Not, I don't wear a lot, but when I went in, I had lipstick on. I wore a fun t-shirt when I would go
Mhm.
in for chemo. Why? Because that empowered me
Mhm.
to get through it.
Absolutely.
And I think that was the hardest part for me with this corona thing. I couldn't do my nails, and that sounds very trivial.
I've talked about this in so many podcasts. Honest to
So
God.
trivial, but for 30 years, I had never seen I've had acrylic on my nails. So I had to take it off, and it was horrifying for me. And I figured it out, and I did end up doing something, but it's still not the same. There's nails for me are therapy too. My
Absolutely. I
manicurist,
totally agree with you.
she's my therapist along with doing a great job.
Yeah.
But that's part of who I am as a
Yeah.
person. So that was really hard for me. And it seems trivial. And somebody
Nope.
probably going to put that in my notes on this, like, oh my God, Melinda, how can you talk about your nails? But it's part of who I am.
Yeah. My
And
cousins and I have a whole group chat about how we couldn't do our nails. The minute the salon opened up, we were like racing to go make our appointments.
right.
No, they're part of it. Some things just make you feel, you know, I don't,
Whole.
yeah, it's not even the word empowered too. It just makes you feel like you. And that is
Right.
really important because cancer takes so much of you away. It really
Right.
does. It
Oh,
steals
yeah.
it. We do get it back slowly and eventually, but it takes so much of us away. So if getting your nails done makes you feel a little bit more like Melinda, get your freaking nails done. Like, that
Right.
is just the truth. It just is.
It's very hard unless you've been through whatever cancer diagnosis,
Mhm.
because, or it can be another illness, a major illness as well, but how it does chip away at who you are. You lose
Yeah.
literally lose pieces of your body. You
Mm-hmm.
lose pieces of who you are, your soul at
Mm-hmm.
some level. You lose that.
Yeah.
And so whatever little thing works for you, you should grab onto that, and it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay to do that.
Right when I was right before I was diagnosed, I was hospitalized for some mental health issues that I was having. I was suicidal, and it took me a year to climb out of that hole. And I weighed about 87 pounds. I was
Wow.
the smallest I've ever been. And by the way, I'm only 4 feet 10 inches. So when you weigh 87 pounds and you're 4 feet 10 inches, it shows. And I hospitalized myself in March. Took me a year to climb out of that hole. I felt good. Like, I was personal training again. My body was healthy. I felt really strong. And then I got cancer. And I remember being like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I actually feel good right now. And then, my breasts were removed, and that was so hard. And it wasn't because I needed my breasts. That's
Mhm.
not it. It was because it altered my body in such a dramatic way. And then I started gaining weight again because, steroids and everything else
Mhm.
that you put on. People think that you get cancer and get skinny, and it's so
It's
not true
so
for
not true.
everybody. And
Not
then
true.
my hair changed, and I couldn't. I'll never forget. We were going to an event, and I wanted to wear this one dress that I loved, and I went to go put it on, and I had implants at the time, and I went to go zip it up, and I couldn't zip it up because normally you'd squish into the dress a little bit,
They
and
don't
those
squish.
implants were rock hard, and they weren't going to squish. I just was crying. I was like, I had nothing to wear. It took part of me away. It took a really long time for me to realize, all the scars that are all over my body make me who I am. It's okay
Mhm.
that I have them all over my body. It's not, I looked at them as being a rag doll and being sewn together, and that's not what it was once I got the feeling of myself back.
Mhm. Well, scars show you the battles that you won.
Yeah.
Really, they do. We had on my show a good friend of mine who had cancer, throat cancer, and he didn't. When I asked him to be my guest, he was actually my first official guest.
Oh,
And he said, I can't do this. No one's going to want to hear me because, he has trouble talking.
oh,
And I
right,
said, no,
right.
you do fine. You're fine.
Mhm.
I mean, he's an amazing person. He's a drummer. He's
Right.
come through this twice. He's a fourth angel
Awesome.
at Cleveland Clinic. So he's a mentor for people going through
Right.
he's gone through.
Oh, I love
And he's
that.
just an amazing person. But he had to feel, I think now he's at a different level. I think he feels even more empowered. But yeah, it was the scars and the things that he went through took away part of who
Mhm.
he was, that cool drummer out, in a band and being
It
able to
does.
sing or do whatever. And he could relate to that. And so it isn't just about, like you said, it's not just about breast cancer. It's wherever your scars are from whatever you've gone through. It alters,
Absolutely.
it alters you.
Absolutely. And especially men. I have some male friends that have male breast cancer, and their chest gets amputated just like ours does. And
Mhm.
the scars are there, and they're concaved, and there's no reconstruction for men. They don't get that, I don't want to say luxury, but sort of luxury. I mean, there's a
Mhm.
lot of issues in the stigma around that we really need to break, because we need to listen to how men are being affected by this. But of course, men don't really talk about that part of it, but we want to get them to open up and know that they're not
Mhm.
alone, and that it's okay to feel that.
I think people don't even think that men get breast cancer. Most
Oh, they don't.
people, it's not even in their realm of thoughts. It's like, oh my God, somebody got breast cancer.
Right.
It's an oddity, but it's really not.
Yeah. My friend, when he was diagnosed, he called it chest cancer for the longest time because he was so embarrassed to
To
tell
say
his friends
breast.
that he had breast cancer. Yeah. It's just,
So,
it's how the world is, I guess.
so I'm going to ask this question because I've asked a bunch of people this, not necessarily on the show, but so
Sure.
now as we go out into the world after being stuck in with COVID, no, some people are already going backwards, but let's assume we're moving forward. What are you going to miss about being home?
Well, see, so here's the thing. I work from home.
Mm-hmm.
So the funny thing about COVID is I work from home. I used to use Instacart before everybody else used Instacart. I never really left my house. That's the honest to God truth. It was when they told me I couldn't that I was like, what do you mean I can't leave my house? Um, I don't know what I'm really going to miss, because what I can't wait for is for my kids to get out of the house. And I don't mean that because I can't stand being around them. I love, love, love my kids. They need to get out of the house.
Mhm.
Like, I want to see them get out and thrive. Like, that's really what I want to see. Um, I don't think there's much I'm going to miss about this when this is over with. I want to, travel. I want to go, I travel a little bit for work. I want to go back to that. I miss going to New York City. I mean, I miss that. Uh,
Mhm.
I think I'm going to, there's things that will change because of it. I don't think I'll be going into the city as much as I would want to, because there is a little, like, I have a little anxious about that.
Mhm.
Um, I'm not going to miss cooking my kids 3 huge meals a day because they're big eaters. My grocery bill is going to go down. So I don't know. That's a really hard question.
Well, so it came up for me because I drive a lot. Remember, I said I like driving. And
Yeah.
my last several jobs, I've been doing a lot of driving. And one of the things I hate about driving is traffic. And
Ah,
so it occurred to me where I hit finally, there's now a little bit of traffic going on in Cleveland. I'm like, what? There's traffic? Why do we have traffic?
right.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, that's the one thing. If somebody said to me, what would you miss about our lockdown? That's it. It's the traffic. It's sitting in the wasting the time in the traffic. I can get where I need to go, in 10, 15 minutes versus
Right.
2, 3 times
I
that,
can understand that for sure. I'm
especially in New
not,
York.
yeah, New
Because
York
I've
City
driven
traffic's
into New York
terrible.
City. That is just a horrific
Yeah, I
event by
mean, where
itself.
I live, there's no traffic, but yeah, that I can understand that. I mean, there's a little bit of traffic, but I hate sitting in traffic, so I totally understand.
I mean, I make use of it, but it's still,
Yeah.
and it's a funny, weird thing, but that I was thinking about that the other day, started laughing. I'm like, well, you know what? This is the one thing that
That's the one thing I'm going to keep thinking about. That you got me thinking now. I'm going to have to think on
I'm
that,
going to be
because
looking for a post on this now.
yeah, I will definitely put a post on that. It's going to take me a while to think about it, though, because I can't wait for this thing to be over with. Although I don't really think it's ever going to be over with, but
Well, I can't
um,
wait to go to the beach. I mean, I really want to go back to the ocean. And of course,
yeah,
everywhere that there's an ocean, that's where our spikes are right now. So
I
that isn't
know.
in the cards at the moment
I mean,
for
I
me.
just want to go to a restaurant and not have a mask on. I mean, I
Yeah.
really don't like wearing the mask. Honest to God, it brings out a lot of anxiety for me. I actually had a panic attack in the line at Target picking up my medication because the guy in back of me was a little close to me and he had a mask on. His mask was really high up and he had a baseball hat on.
So you
And
had too much space.
yeah, I don't know, like his body language was really tense and it scared me. Not that I really don't think he was going to do anything. That's not it. But I've had some trauma in my life, so I'm kind of aware, and I'm usually very aware of my surroundings.
Hmm.
And not being able to see his face it was powerful to me. I didn't like it at all.
And he could have been having a very bad day and been nervous being there and frightened and just wanted to
Absolutely.
get in and
Or he
out.
could have been sick and just like covering his face up. I mean, absolutely,
Right.
there could have been a million things going on. And like I said, I don't think he would. It just your mind really isn't
Plays
plays
on you.
game. Yeah, and when I have my mask on and if I have my glasses on and earbuds in, I'm like, I feel like my equilibrium is completely off. Like my senses are being, disillusioned in a way, and I can't wait for that to stop. But I
Yeah.
don't think it's going to for a while.
Yeah. I think we're stuck with the mask for a little while, but
At least there's cute
that's
ones
a
out there.
small price to pay to be
Absolutely,
out.
I got no problem wearing a mask for that reason when I
Yeah.
want to go out.
Well, Karen, do you have any other questions for you? You've been
I'm
really a delight to have on and get to meet you in person. You have no
Absolutely.
idea how excited I was that you accepted
Of
the
course. I
invitation.
always do things like this because I really do believe that, the more we talk, the more people can listen and hear our story. And especially on a platform that's, going to reach different people, because I just was saying to a few friends the other day, I've spoken at breast cancer conventions and conferences, and you speak and everybody in the audience is like they all agree with you because they've been there. And then I remember looking out at one, I was like, God, I'm not telling them anything they don't know. They all know this.
Mhm.
And then I spoke at a health conference where there was different illnesses there, and people were like, wow. And people came up to me afterwards and they said, I had no idea that you go through that with breast cancer, or I thought breast cancer got all the money. I can't believe people still die of this. And I thought that was the fun illness to get. I mean, when you preach outside your community, you really make a difference. So platforms like this are great because you never know who's going to listen to it.
Right. It's kind of like coffee talk. Somebody's sitting here listening.
Yeah,
No, we're just having a conversation.
absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for
I
having me on.
certainly learned a lot. Um, you know, I'm very blessed. I have not had breast cancer. Um, I had an aunt who had breast cancer, but it came on quickly and she died quickly. So just knowing some of the things that you're talking about, it's helpful to understand. I know men get breast cancer, but you're right, we don't really talk about it. And we should be talking about it so that men feel more comfortable with
Absolutely.
their own bodies. So just thank you so much for being our guest today.
Oh,
Thank
it
you.
was my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
And I'm going to look forward to your post on the,
I got to keep thinking about it. I'm telling
yep,
you.
I'm going to hold you to that.
You
We'll have you
trust
back
me.
on to talk about it.
That sounds great.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care.
Everybody
Bye-bye.
have a great
Bye.
day.